The year 2020 had everything we have ever had nightmares about, as long as we've been a species. But Mother Nature in that year wanted to play a good old game of pile-on. Yeah, the very name Hurricane Delta tells you all you need to know. Hi, I'm Chris May, writer, producer, and host of This Day in Weather History, now in its second year from the Weather Network in Canada. For the first time since 2005, we had to dip into the Greek alphabet for names, and it was October 9th of 2020 when Hurricane Delta made landfall in Louisiana. Yep, on this day in weather history. Now, looking back at 2021, the last thing any of us cares to hear is the word Delta. 2020 was ruined by COVID-19, and 2021 went to hell in a handbasket as well because of the Delta variant. But for the proud and battered citizens of Louisiana, Delta meant something devastating when it was the record-tying fourth named storm of 2020 to make landfall in their state, as well as the record-breaking 10th named storm to strike the United States in that year. Very early on in the day, there were already offshore winds reading 120 miles per hour, close to 195 kilometers per hour. And then this monster began to move into an area of cooler waters, higher wind shear, dry air. These are all killers of hurricanes. Why is that? Well, it essentially cuts off its food supply with the dry air, stunts its growth with the wind shear, and as a result of this, Delta weakened back to a Category 2 status storm. This was probably the only thing that went right for the Mardi Gras state on this day, because when Delta made landfall near Creole, Louisiana, its winds had been reduced to a weaker but still strong 100 miles per hour, which equates to about 155 kilometers per hour. But the wind on its own was not the worst aspect of this event. You see, Delta made landfall just 12 miles or 19 kilometers east of where Hurricane Laura did just 6 weeks earlier. That's right, 2 landfalls almost in the exact same spot, and within only a short period of time separating them. On a global scale, this would be like hitting the target on a dartboard, then splitting that dart with another one that followed shortly after. Understandably, there were still very shaken local residents who were traumatized because, after all, the effects and damage left behind from Laura were all still there. Get this, there were still 5,600 residents who were temporarily housed in hotels because their homes were destroyed by the hurricane. Plus, of the homes that had been battered by Hurricane Laura, there were 6,000 of them that still had tarps acting as a roof because the permanent version had long since blown away. Rain in other areas was equally, if not more, of a problem. For instance, the Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport recorded 8 inches. That's 200 millimeters of rain. This prompted the National Weather Service to issue a flash flood warning, and outside on the surrounding roads, motorists were getting stuck in those high water levels. What happened? First, it was the earliest 25th tropical or subtropical storm on record in an Atlantic hurricane season, surpassing the old mark of November 15th set by Tropical Storm Gamma in 2005. And as I mentioned earlier, the only other year to that point to have reached into the Greek alphabet for the naming convention. On top of that, Delta was also the fastest to jump in intensification from a tropical depression to a severe storm for the Atlantic Basin, and severe storm is anything Category 3 or higher. Delta jumped from a 35 mile per hour or 55 kilometer per hour tropical depression to a 130 mile per hour or 215 kilometer per hour Category 4 hurricane in only 24 hours. That is like an explosion of energy. Delta was also the new record-setting 10th named storm of the year to make landfall on the shores of the continental United States, and that beat a record that had dated back 105 years ago when the previous mark was 9, set all the way back in 1916. But the hits, they just keep on coming from this storm. It was the record-tying fourth named storm to hit Louisiana in this 1 year, and that tied the record set in 2002, but that didn't last long because they broke the record. The fifth to drive into Louisiana during this horror story of a year already was Hurricane Zeta, and that was reached soon afterward when it hit later in October. 2020 will be a year to remember forever for so many reasons, but Louisiana will also never forget this day in weather history. Tomorrow is October the 10th. For this one, we will be looking to another hurricane, but this one is still the standard against which most hurricanes in the modern era had been stacked up to until names like Katrina and Rita and others happened in the 21st century. Tomorrow, we go for a deep dive into the Great Hurricane of 1780 on this day in weather history with me, your host, Chris May.